So this is going to be a slightly different video from what I usually do. I wanted to just talk about Pax Dei. It's a MMO coming out from Finnish developer Mainframe Industries. And the reason I want to do this video is it's taken me a little bit by surprise. Pax Dei is one of those games that I signed up for alpha last year and then totally forgot about its existence until I received a key by email last month. Even after receiving the key, I didn't pay much attention to it because I didn't really remember that I'd applied for it, and it wasn't really on my radar. I hadn't seen much news about it. Since the beginning of the year, I've participated in 3 alpha and beta tests of upcoming MMOs. The first being Throne of Liberty, which was probably the one that I had the highest hopes for, and one that I played for probably about 5 hours and then uninstalled. The other was a game called Eternal Tombs, which was more like something that I would have knocked up over the weekend in Unity. It was really awful. I played it for about 10 minutes and then moved on. The other one is Once Human, and Once Human is pretty decent. It's very different from your standard MMO. Once Human is based on a kind of future environment, and although it's fun, it's not what I like as a traditional MMO, which is kind of more fantasy driven. So after installing and launching Pax Dei, I went straight in and started to make a character. The character builder is reasonable. It's nothing special. It's not to the same standards as something that you find in Black Desert, but it gives you a decent number of preset faces, the ability to adjust all of the facial features, as well as change your body type. So I went with the standard character that I build for every single MMO, which is the female character with red hair. It's probably my standard go-to. Must say something about me, but it's my standard go-to when it comes to MMO characters. And with a limited customization, went in and built my character. So upon loading in, first impressions, obviously the graphics, very, very positive. You could tell straight away that it was using Unreal Engine 5. You can tell by the lighting, you can tell by the extended draw distances. In terms of where I spawned as well, high up, looking down across valleys over mountains. And one of the first things I noticed was the way the character moves. For me, one of the things that very often decides whether I like or don't like a game is the way that the character moves. And for instance, in Throne of Liberty, immediately I could feel that I wasn't going to enjoy the game just based on the floatiness of the character. The character wasn't grounded enough. Whereas with Pax Dei, although there are some animations that someone might say, oh, it's still in alpha, some animations like the swimming animation and when your character transitions from swimming onto the land, those are a bit janky and a bit floaty. But otherwise, it felt reasonably grounded. It could potentially do with having a crouch and a prone stance as well. Those might come, but as it is, it feels reasonably realistic in the way that the character moves. The second thing I liked about Pax Dei on initial impression was the grittiness of it. It's definitely not your Eastern style Final Fantasy waifu MMO. It leads much more to a medieval Norse Viking gritty aesthetic, which I very much prefer. So I wanted to start off getting a feel for the game by running about, exploring a little, and then settling into doing some of the things that the game wanted me to do. With it being a sandbox MMO, there are no quests, there are no NPCs, there are very little hints as to what it is that it wants you to do. If you open up your crafting menu, you can pretty much tell that things that you need to be able to do are right in front of you. So go ahead, craft yourself a pointy stick, make yourself a shield, then start creating the tools that you need to go ahead and start building and hunting. So off I went and started down that road of learning what Pax Dei was all about. And then after probably about 5 or 6 hours into the game, I realized that I absolutely hated it. I could not stand how long it took for anything to happen. If I wanted to craft a foundation for a building, that would require me to gather enough stone, gather enough clay. Some of the resources were reasonably limited because of the population of the server. So it was taking a long time to do very, very basic things like trying to put a roof over my head. I wanted to cut down a tree. Half the trees I couldn't cut down because the axe that I had wasn't good enough. So I'd have to kind of make a better axe. But to be able to make a better axe, I'd need to craft 100 different other things before I can get to that point. So it felt like it was intentionally slowing down the progress I was trying to make. And I was trying to see as much and experience as much of the game as I could. And the game seemed to be actively putting barriers in front of me by making things difficult to achieve. So I needed a lot of wood and stone and clay to build a wall, just a single wall. It felt like building 1 or 2 walls in Pax Dei was the equivalent of building an entire house in something like Conan, for example. So it did feel excessively grindy. And after 5 or 6 hours playing it, I wasn't enjoying myself at all. And I sat down and I spoke to Magnum and I said to him, I can't see myself taking this much further, because it didn't feel like I was making any progress very quickly. So I stepped away from it for a day. And then when Mr. Disease got himself a alpha key as well, I thought, well, I'll pop back in, see how he's doing, and potentially start a new character and play alongside him, give it a second chance. And that's when I took the opportunity to approach the game from a slightly different point of view. Rather than approaching it like a MMO where I'm trying to level and progress as quickly as I can so we can get to end game or whatever it might be, what I did is I chilled out a bit and I took it as more of a medieval peasant serf type experience where we're trying to survive, but also just taking some time to enjoy the environment, enjoy the world. Because it's predominantly PvE, there is a PvP zone which you can optionally go in and farm and fight in. So I'm definitely not a role player. I don't enjoy RPing on servers. I don't enjoy that type of gameplay. What Pax Dei allowed me to do was just potter around a little bit. Go in, build a little bit of the house, then go off on a hunting trip, gather some resources, and just explore the world a little. See what other people were doing, get some inspiration from their buildings, see what they were doing, and perhaps interact with them a little bit before moving on. So for me, Pax Dei is not a standard MMO. It's different. It's more like a chilled out peasant simulator, where it will take you a while to build your house. It will take you a long time to gather those resources. And if that's not your type of game, then Pax Dei is probably not for you. If all you want to do is fight and kill and loot other people, there's probably the opportunity to do that in the PvP zones, but you'll end up just annoying the people around you that are enjoying the Pax Dei experience. So one of the things I really liked about Pax Dei is sometimes how dangerous the environments appear to be. So although once you've played it for a little bit, you'll realize, okay, going to the woods, yes, you might come across a bear at the moment. That might be your biggest problem. But initially, when I was exploring the world and wandering around, you might see a forest area where there's a number of trees, and you think to yourself, oh, it looks very dark in there. I wonder what might be lurking within. And you would carefully move into that space and use the light. So if you'd see a part of the forest that was a little bit better lit, you'd kind of move into that space so that you wouldn't be surprised by any creatures. I quite enjoyed that. I quite liked the feeling that gave during exploration, that some areas might be quite dangerous. Same thing with the NPCs. Some of the NPC fortifications, some of the NPC strongholds, get anywhere near them, they start to chase you off, and then potentially you could die quite easily if you don't have the right gear to approach them. It's yours. You're gonna die. I need to run now. James, help! Help! Oh,
No.
piece of shit. One of the things I enjoyed about Pax Dei was learning where resources were. So you might wander into a forest and then realize that this forest contains these specific types of berries, these nuts, and if you're looking for them in the future for a recipe, you could go back to that location and they would still be there, unless, of course, somebody built a house on top of them. You'd probably be able to find those resources again. So I ended up starting to know where certain resources were. So if I needed apples, for example, there would be an apple tree in a specific forest. I'd be able to go there and grab some apples. If I was looking for some garlic, I knew exactly where that might be. Just kind of building up that knowledge of the environment and where things were. Quite enjoyed that part of the game. It's quite relaxing. If we needed to hunt deer, where would the deer usually hung around? We needed some deer meat, we'll go over there and grab some deer meat. And then once the area becomes a little bit more populated and there's a little bit of competition for resources, then what you do is explore a little bit further out, move to the next forest, see what you can find there. So that chilled out vibe to Pax Day is something that I really appreciated and didn't expect at all. I can obviously see that's not appealing to everyone. When I started in Pax Day, there were quite a lot of people running around, and the stupid ones that were constantly jumping on top of you and trying to attack you, they disappeared after a day or two. They got bored and moved on. And those people that remained, you could see yourself building a small Viking community with. They would very often come along, look at your house, potentially drop you an item or ask you if you needed an item, have chats with them. You could walk around the village, recognize the people that had started to build their houses, and hopefully in future, potentially do some PvP with. So I realized that the developers are trying to balance gameplay and the type of players that they get in the game. Having full loot open world PvP is probably not the way to go, but it would be great if it was possible to do some PvP within the living zones. So I will probably just take it easy, take it slow, enjoy it when I can. When I've got a free weekend or whatever it might be, I'll kind of go in, spend a little bit of time, and just enjoy the environment. Enjoy what Pax Day has to offer as a social sandbox MMO. And with the Unreal 5 engine and the lighting, does a great job in creating the atmosphere that I personally enjoy.